Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about my home birth story. So I have two kids. Legend is 3.5 and Journey is my 6-month-old. With Legend, I had a hospital birth with an epidural. I had a doula and I had wanted to try natural, but at the time we didn't really have the funds to do a home birth, and I was a little afraid to not have the option of an epidural because I didn't really know what birth was going to be like. And so I did a hospital birth and I ended up getting an epidural, which was great. It was, honestly, I had a great hospital birth and everything really went well. I just personally hated my hospital experience. I just don't do well with like tubes and cords and monitoring and not being able to move around and a catheter. And I just, like, at one point I remember pulling the oxygen thing off my finger and like throwing it across the room because I literally felt like I was crawling out of my skin. And then after Legend was born, he was born at 10:56 p.m. So by the time we got into our room, you know, we hadn't slept for 30 plus however many hours. I'll have to share my story with him on here one time. Nurses and people came in like every hour around the clock. He was a bigger baby, so they had his blood work to check his glucose levels every hour, and we just got no sleep and no rest, and you know, everything's going on already with your body postpartum, so not sleeping on top of that. And just for me, like, I don't feel super comfortable in hospitals. So anyways, we'll put all that to the side. Baby number 2, I knew I was pregnant and it had been something in my heart to do a natural birth, but because I didn't do it with Legend, it made me feel a little insecure about trying again. And so I kind of just told myself, like, I don't know, I think I'm going to do the epidural thing again. But I had a friend invite me to a pregnant moms group to do this like online course of natural like birth videos. And when she asked me, I was kind of like, nah, I'm going to do an epidural, but maybe I'll do it just to meet people because I didn't know very many people in the area and I was wanting to meet mom friends. Well, it's just funny the way that God works, because I started going to watch these videos with this group of girls, and my friend at the time was just so passionate about natural birth. Like, she imparted faith to me. Like, I felt like her passion kind of rubbed off on me and made me feel like, you know what, I probably can do this. And it began this process, my whole pregnancy for me, really, of talking to the Lord about what it could be like to have a natural birth. And so I felt like him just invite me in this journey with him. And during worship, I had this vision one evening in worship of like Jesus was walking up to me. I'm gonna get emotional sharing this. He was walking up to me and he was holding a baby girl. And I had been journaling weeks before, and I felt like he kind of asked me in my heart, like, what would you want? And I was afraid to say that I wanted a girl because I was like, what if I don't have a girl and then I'm gonna feel bad that I wanted one and I didn't get one? And I just remember like writing in my journal, like, in my heart, I really want a baby girl. And not a few weeks later, I had this vision of Jesus walking up to me in worship with a baby girl and handing her to me and like basically saying, I trust you. And so in my heart, I was like, I know I'm having a girl. Like, I felt like Jesus told me that. But a lot of my pregnancy, things like this were happening. So another time in worship, I had been like desiring to do a natural birth, but still recognizing in my heart that there were these fears and kind of these barriers that were keeping me from feeling like, yeah, I could do it. And so anyways, I was in worship and I saw this pathway again. Like, I guess a vision is like a term. I don't know if you can hear my baby out there. A vision, maybe a picture would be a better way to describe it. My eyes were closed and I saw this picture in my mind of like this pathway with all these stones. And Jesus was like walking down the pathway and he reached his hand out to me and basically was like, do you want me to show you the way? And I knew that he was speaking to my heart, that he was going to show me the way to overcome my fears and trust him to do a natural birth. And I felt like he was just inviting me into this process with him. And for me, it was a journey, which actually I ended up naming my daughter Journey. But it was a journey for me of overcoming fear, of learning to trust my own body and to trust the Lord, because I didn't realize how much fear I had in my first pregnancy until looking back. I was like, man, I did not surrender. Like during my contractions, I was tensing up. Even my doula said I was crawling out with every contraction. And it was probably a good thing that I got an epidural because I was not relaxing, telling me about birthing from within. So throughout my pregnancy, I would go take a bath after we got Legend to bed, and I would read this book. And it was just talking about surrendering in the pain, working through like fears, journaling through fears, like asking questions like, do I trust my body? And I remember writing that down, and my answer was no. And it really hit me because I was like, man, I don't actually trust my own body to deliver this baby. Like, I have a question in my heart of, can I do this? And then I felt the Lord being like, do you trust me? And I was like, oof, I honestly am like, I'm afraid. Like, actually. And okay, I'm going to pause here and say that this is not any shame or any condemnation or any pressure on any pregnant mom or woman out there of anyone else's story. I'm just sharing my story because I think it's really beautiful and I want to share it with the world. But I've also had another birth experience. So this is not to say that if you have an epidural, you have a different kind of birth, that you didn't trust God or you didn't trust your body. I'm just saying for me, this is something that I felt like God was confronting in my heart at that time, in that moment. And so anyways, I was working through these fears. Another like cool thing the book talks about is like leaning into pain. So I would practice this during my pregnancy of like when I felt uncomfortable, instead of trying to get out of it or figure out how to distract myself or take a pill, I would kind of like lean into the pain and be like, okay, I'm not feeling good right now. Like something is hurting. My legs are hurting. I wonder why my legs are hurting. I'm curious where that came from. And I would kind of like practice these coping mechanisms of like leaning in and accepting pain and being curious about what's happening in my body instead of just trying to get rid of it. And so that was one thing that was like, I feel like it was huge. And then I also read Supernatural Childbirth, the Supernatural Childbirth book. And I wouldn't say that I had a pain-free birth, but I do feel like I had a supernatural birth in that it was so peaceful and I felt God's presence so strong and I felt him there with me. And it was like just the most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced in my life. I'm literally gonna get like emotional thinking about it because, okay, I'm gonna backtrack. I'm gonna tell the whole story. So I had felt like during my pregnancy, I kept hearing this like inner thought. I feel like it was the Lord saying, she's coming sooner than you think. And so I had felt like she was gonna come like maybe a few months early, maybe a few weeks early. I think every pregnant woman wants this or thinks it's gonna happen. But I had felt like this was gonna happen and it didn't. But the day of my delivery, my midwife got to the house at 5 and I pushed her out at 8:15. So she came way sooner than I thought she was gonna come. I thought it was gonna take like all night of laboring. So anyways, apparently that's what God was trying to tell me. But because of that, I was feeling anxious about like wanting her to come and when is it going to happen. And so the day of, I ended up being 13 days late. Yeah, 13 days late. After thinking she was going to come 2 months early. It was a hard waiting game. It really was. I was at the water park like a few days before I delivered. And I met my midwife and she's like, you probably have another week. And I was like crying, like, why am I still pregnant? So funny thinking about it. So the day of, I started contractions around 12 or 1 and I didn't even know if they were contractions. I just felt like this cramping and this like kind of dull aching in my pelvic area. And I remember telling my mom and she got all excited and she's like, maybe you're going into labor. And I was like, no mom, like don't say that. I can't handle thinking it's gonna happen if it isn't. And so I called my midwife and she's like, well, you could be starting labor, like time them and call me back in an hour. Well, they didn't go away and they started getting like undeniably timeable and they started speeding up and I was recognizing a pattern. So I called her back and I told her like, hey, this is what's going on. And she said like, you are going into labor, like I'm gonna turn on a movie and I'll probably see you in a few hours. And literally the whole day I was in denial and I was like, no, that's not gonna happen. Like, I took hours to progress this far with my son and it's probably gonna be like the middle of the night when she comes to my house. Well, I called her back in 2 hours and I think my contractions were like 5 minutes apart. And so she was wanting to head over and I'm like, I really am not having like that bad of contractions. Like, I can tell you don't need to come yet. She's like, well, I'm just gonna come and set up and I can leave. Like, I don't have to stare at you. I'll just set up and leave. And she's like, you let me know if anything changes. I'm gonna drive over. She's a 30-minute drive away. So she's driving over, and after I got off the phone with her, I was like, oh wow, my contractions went from like, I'm walking around the house cleaning to I wanna lay down and like breathe through them and moan a little bit. So around that time, my son came in. Such sweet memories. My son came in and cuddled me and gave me kisses and said goodbye. I turned on some worship music and laid in my bed just to rest before, you know, labor would get intense. And my mom and sister and son headed out. Got to my house at 5. And I didn't know, but apparently I was in active labor already. And I was just so blown away by how much peace and how natural and how like easy it felt to be in labor. Because before with my son, like when I was in labor, it was like I'm like tensing up out of every contraction. I'm, you know, like kind of like I don't know anything to expect, and everything more than I realized was scaring me. And so when my water broke, that was scary. Like when I had to moan through my contractions, that was really scary. When I felt a shooting sharp pain, I wanted to like pull away and crawl out of it, and my body was like tensing up, and I wasn't trusting my body. I wasn't trusting the process of birth. And so I think I actually held on to each contraction and like brought it into the next one, which made it even harder. And I had like massive back labor with him. Oof, I just remember my doula like pressing my hips together with my son to try to like relieve the pain. My birth with Journey. So I'm at home, the midwife's setting up. I'm like, at the time I'm in active labor. So my contractions are like 4 minutes apart, lasting like almost a minute, I think a minute long or more. And I'm sitting actually right here in my bedroom, and I'm on my birthing ball, and we're having a conversation.
Should I fill up the tub then?
She's talking to me about her day. My husband's coming in and out, and I'm just like hanging out on my birthing ball. And then when a contraction comes, I bend over kind of like this, and they put their warm hands on the bottom of my back, and I just kind of like woo, like breathe through it, moan through it a little bit. Honestly, not even a ton of pain. And then it goes away. And my husband goes, well, is it gonna get like more intense? And my midwife goes, no, this is like labor. This is, if you can do this, like you can do labor. And I just remember being in disbelief. Like, is this like a joke? Like, there's no way I'm having a baby anytime soon, because this is so chill. Like, no one's poking me, no one's pricking me with needles, no one's strapping me up to anything. Like, I'm literally just chilling in my house on a birthing ball talking about my day. Okay, so my contractions start getting closer together, but honestly not more intense. I'm just breathing through them like maybe now every 3 minutes. And so I lay on the bed, and she checked me, and she said during a contraction I was at a 7. She'd been at my house like maybe an hour. And when she said that, I honestly started crying, because with my son, it had taken so much for me to get to even 5 centimeters. And then I wanted an epidural, and I was already at 7 centimeters, and I didn't even feel like that much pain. Like, it was easy. And I just got so emotional, like, oh my gosh, I can do this. Like, this is okay. Like, I can do this, you know? And it was a really beautiful moment. That's the only check I ever had, the only time she ever checked me, like internal check. And I told my husband, he started crying, and she goes, well, because I had bought a birthing pool, and she knew I spent money on it. So she's like, well, if you want to labor in water, you better get in your pool, because you're having your baby soon. And I was like, there's no way. Like, still thinking in my head, like, okay, I'm still going to be laboring through the night. And so I kind of laughed. I was like, okay, why not? It sounds nice to get in there. And so I got in the pool, and I labored in there for a while. It felt really comfortable to like sit with my legs open, kind of in like a squatting position in the pool. So I like laid with the tub around me like this, and then I kind of like squatted with my legs, and we were still just visiting. And when a contraction would come, I would kind of like breathe through it, and they started getting a little stronger. A few different times my midwife would come over and like rub my back, or she dipped a towel in the warm water and laid it across my back. And she said, I could probably drop in some photos and show you guys, but she would come and say to me like, oh, that was a tough one. Let it go. You never have to see that one again. And I remember when she said that, it set me free in a sense. Like I was like, oh my gosh, if she hadn't said that, I probably would have tensed up and held on to that last contraction because it was a little painful. But when she said that, I felt myself be like, okay, like let it go, Kaylee, like let it go, that one's over. And that really helped me stay in this like place of surrender. We had worship music playing, and so this, now maybe I've been laboring about an hour and a half, or maybe like the 2-hour mark. My husband got in the pool with me, and we had worship music playing, and we were just worshiping during like the middle of contractions. So I'd breathe through a contraction, they put warm hands on my back, and then it would be over, and we'd have a few minutes where we would just worship or pray together. And my midwife actually said, after I like delivered and pushed Journey out, she said, you could feel a presence in your guys' home. Like you could feel the love and the peace and the calm of like, there is just something really beautiful going on when you guys were in the pool. And my husband and I felt it as well. Like I was so wrecked by my home birth. Like I was crying for like months. I still get emotional, but I was like crying. I was like, I always believed that these kind of births were possible, but I never believed they were possible for me. Like I always thought that was a birth for somebody else. That was somebody else's story, but it became my story. Okay, so I'm gonna finish. I'm probably like at least 8 centimeters or so by now, maybe more. And she asked like, well, do you want to, oh, I know, because my husband forgot to turn the hot water off. So all of a sudden I realized I'm super hot in this pool, and they fill the water and they're like, this hot water is way too hot for you. So they got me out of the pool. I got out of the pool and I went in the shower, and they cooled the pool down. The shower was not very comfortable for me because my body felt like I needed to be in a squatting position, and it was really awkward to try to do that in the shower. I tried like hugging my husband and leaning on him during contractions with the water on my back, but I just didn't really love it. So a few minutes later, as soon as the pool was cooled down, I went back in the pool, and then I just labored in there the next like 30 minutes. Still just chatting in between contractions or worshiping like I was sharing with my midwife. And okay, so I remember still being like, this is ridiculous how like calm and how at peace I feel. And like I have pictures of me laughing, guys. Like she said I'm complete, like I'm fully complete, and I'm laughing in between contractions, like just being silly, cracking jokes. It's just ridiculous. And the thing that gets me is that like I actually think labor really is like this. It's just when you get an epidural, you don't know what's going on in your body because you can't feel anything, or like you hold on to your contractions, or I held on to my contractions because I was so tensed up that I never had the ebbs and flows in between because I wasn't like surrendering to them. So okay, anyway, so I'm in the pool, and all of a sudden the contractions stop. And I didn't have any. And I knew, because I'd watched like these natural birth videos. I looked at my midwife and I go, oh my gosh, I haven't had a contraction for a while. Like, does that mean that it's about to get really intense? And she's like, yeah, like this is the end. Basically, you're gonna start pushing soon. And so she's like, enjoy it. You know, so I enjoyed my last, like, I think there was a good probably 3, 4, maybe, probably not 5, probably about 4 minutes where I didn't have any contractions. And then they started coming super strong. Honestly, still not super painful. Just like I could tell there's a lot going on in my body and a lot of pressure. And so basically she's starting to move down. And this is where it gets more graphic. Okay, so if you don't want to hear this part, you can click off the video. But basically I could feel like Journey dropping down lower. And how to describe it? Okay, so basically I had to like make moaning sounds to get through. Like honestly, it didn't even feel like I was choosing to make sounds. It's like my body was making them. And my midwife, I could tell, because I'm like, you know, almost outside of my body listening to like, wow, that sounds different as I'm making the sound. And my midwife was like, I heard her say to the midwife apprentice, like, oh, that's a pushing sound. Like she's gonna get ready to push. And she said to me, Kaylee, do you want to have this baby in the water? And I said, no, but I don't want to get it out because it feels good in here and I'm not going to have her anytime soon. And my midwife started laughing at me. She's like, you're literally starting to push and you still don't believe me that your baby's coming. It's just so funny. And now I'm like, maybe that's why God kept telling me she's coming sooner than you think, because he knew I was going to be in denial all day about how fast she was coming. And so the midwife starts getting everything ready. They're like getting, you know, the towels and sheets and everything. I don't know, whatever they're getting. Oh, the baby blanket warm. And my body, at this point, my body is like, it's doing whatever it wants to do. I don't even know what's happening. Like, I felt like I was so out of it. And I heard them say, like, get her out of the pool. So they're picking me up and bringing me in between a contraction out of the pool into our room. And I get a contraction right by the side of our bed and I hit the ground. And I feel like my body is pushing. Like, I'm not even trying. I guess they call it the fetal ejection reflex. But my body is like pushing this baby out. And so they basically, like, she talks to me, my midwife, super stern, and she's like, Kaylee, I need you to turn around. So they turned me around, so my husband's behind me, and they made me like, she basically, my legs were really, oh wait, I'm going a little too fast. Okay, so my husband's behind me and I get another contraction. At this point, I'm pushing the baby out. So my midwife told me that I pushed her out in 3 pushes. And so this, I think, was like my first main push where, oh my gosh, okay, I honestly wouldn't even say my labor was that intense. Like I just shared with you guys, I was talking and laughing, but this was the moment where, okay, I felt the ring of fire. I felt like, I honestly, what I thought happened, so push 1, like first push where I pushed her head out, my body pushed her head out. And I literally, what I thought was happening was I thought that my midwife had shoved her hand up inside of my vagina and was pulling the baby's head out, like, because it just felt so intense. Like I said, the rest of my birth story, it was like chill, whatever. I'm like breathing through these contractions, listening to music. This is the part where I was like, okay, this was not pain-free. This actually hurt really bad. Feeling the ring of fire. And then what I felt happened, so my next push, apparently the baby's shoulders, which I knew this, but I had forgotten, the baby's shoulders have to like shift one out of the other to make it out. Well, I thought she was stuck because during a push that was happening, and my midwife talked to me really strict and was like, Kaylee, I need you to get your legs underneath you right now. And it's like, as I'm pushing this baby out, because I guess what had happened was I was pushing her out and I was too low down in a squat position to the floor, and so she wasn't gonna be able to catch the baby. And so I'm like basically getting my knees up under me higher. And so second push were her shoulders, and then third push was the rest of her body. No, wait, okay. She told me 3 pushes, but honestly I think it might have been 4, because I remember this moment in the last push where they say you have the like, can I do this moment? And for me, it was my very last push where it was like so intense. And I remember them all being like, Kaylee, you can do this, you can do this. And I grabbed my midwife's shoulder right here. And I remember just like digging in for dear life. Like, I'm sure she had bruises on her because I was just like squeezing. She was across from me and I was like squeezing as hard as I could. And I felt my body try to like tense up and pull out of the contraction instead of breathing down to push her out. And they were so amazing. They were like, Kaylee, you can do this, like breathe down, like push. And then I like kind of let go and like I felt
tell us about it. Man, that was such
it was
a
just literally, it was like the most crazy, amazing, beautiful experience ever, because I loved feeling so connected to my body. I loved knowing what was happening. It made it not scary, because I was like, okay, her head's coming out, like, okay, my body's pushing right now. Okay, my body is taking a break from contractions. Like, this is what's happening. And then it's funny, you know, they say like the moment that they lay them on your chest is the best ever. They couldn't lay her on my chest because I was on the ground in a squat position and the cord was under my leg. And so I was like trying to hold her and they're like, you can't pick her up because the cord won't reach. And so we clipped the cord, and then, you know, I had Adam actually held her, and then they handed her to me and I got a nurser, and we were just like in my room, in my bed, in my home, and it was so cozy. And everyone probably wants to know, like, okay, they stitched me up. I did tear a little bit. So they laid me down and they stitched me up, and then I took a shower, and then I got back in my bed and I got to eat some food and hold my baby. And like, hands down, 1000%, if you could do a home birth, I would say, like, seriously, it was the most amazing thing ever. Like, it was the most beautiful experience. And I will say, like, even the next few nights, like, me and my husband would cry together because it felt like such a miracle and such an intimate thing. I remember, like, just crying and telling him, like, I feel like something in me changed. Like, I found, like, a strength inside of myself. I found, like, something in me. I felt like I, like, experienced God's glory in a way that I never have before. Like, I feel like something, like, I'm forever different. I'm forever marked. I'm forever changed from having this experience. Like, it will go down in the history books as, like, the most beautiful thing. And also just, like, for me, knowing, like, I could do that. My body could do that. My body could create this little human and labor and deliver her on my own, like, in that strength with the Lord. Gosh, guys, like, if you can do a home birth, seriously, it's so worth it. So comment, let me know any questions you have. I hope I shared all the details and I remembered them right. Subscribe and click all those things if you want to see other videos I post, and bless you guys.